Okay, so as some of you know from previous episodes, back in early 2024, after a car accident, I couldn't and really didn't want to drive a car. I was trying to heal and stuck at home with way too much time on my hands. One night by chance, as I was scrolling YouTube, I clicked on a thumbnail which led to an episode of a sailing channel called Learning by Doing, where the host, a Kiwi sailing adventurer and talented photographer named Vernon, had sailed to a mystical place called Wayag near Raja Ampat in Indonesia. Wayag is one of the most visually stunning places on earth, and sailing was the only way to get there. And once there, you're very likely, just like Vernon was, to have the place all to yourself. That sounded like heaven to me. I decided there and then that this is what I was going to do. Sailing had also struck a chord with me. Somewhere deep down just drew me to it. Maybe because it was in the blood? You see, my mum comes from a Greek island, and my dad is Dutch, and he used to sail. He was also in the Dutch Merchant Navy. Although we didn't live too close to water as we grew up, he had taken my older brother and I out on a Hobie Cat a few times in Melbourne at Sandringham when we were younger. I had an inkling back then that this was something I loved. Years later, Dad also told me about the Caribbean paradise Dutch overseas territories like the ABC Islands, Aruba, Bonaire and Curacao, and St Martin, St Eustatius and Saba, but I had never had the opportunity to visit these places, which were semi-mythical to me and about as far away from cold Melbourne as you can possibly get. I started trying to learn everything I could about sailing and managed to get myself aboard a yacht with an instructor who was very understanding about my injuries from the car accident. And in a few legs and with some delays, we managed to sail the east coast of Australia. At that same time, I also started binge watching some YouTube sailing channels and discovered these guys. There's a link of all of these channels in the description below. Also amongst this lot was one particular Dutch guy. He was sailing solo around the Caribbean to the little islands that my father had told me about, on a little yacht and making some pretty good videos on how to do it. His name was Hoob, from Hoob Vlogs. I started watching Hoob's channel religiously. And to learn a bit more and to live vicariously through him and other cruisers, I joined some of the local sailing cruiser groups in the Caribbean, one of which was based in Grenada. I didn't know it yet, but that was going to open up a whole new world for me. Also around this time, I spotted an abandoned yacht for sale in Malaysia, and if you go back a few episodes, you'll know how that turned out. Fast forward to the end of June 2024, and on the Caribbean Cruises pages, I started to see all the chatter about preparations for a hurricane. Tropical storm Beryl had formed and was heading across the Atlantic on a collision course with Grenada, and more specifically, its little outlier island, Carriacou. This seemed like it was going to be a monster, and while I was scared for what might happen to the people, their property, and also to many yachts in the area, I really wanted to know how cruisers were preparing to deal with it, because if I got my wish, chances are that I might be in this situation one day soon myself. After all, I had dreamt of sailing the Caribbean, and these things were an annual occurrence and fact of life over there, so if I couldn't handle the heat, I shouldn't be in the kitchen. I watched on.
This is a major hurricane. It's not a joke.
In the days before the hurricane hit, I kept an eye on the cruisers groups and the weather channels almost around the clock. Watching the yacht AIS location maps, I could see that many liveaboards and cruisers fled, some with less than 24 hours to spare, and went south to Grenada when the probability became higher that Beryl was instead heading for Carriacou. But some others, who were storing the yachts in the heart for the hurricane season, were sadly not there and couldn't get there in time to move their yachts. These people had to watch and hope that their yachts were properly secured by the yard's hurricane straps, as they hoped and prayed for the best. For many, it was going to be a nervous wait, and one that didn't end well. Hurricane Beryl hit Carriacou at 11 a.m. on the 1st of July 2024 and was just 7 miles per hour short of being a Category 5. It was the strongest ever hurricane to hit Grenada or its outlying islands, and also became the first tropical system on record to undergo rapid intensification in the main development region of the Atlantic during the month of June. Furthermore, it intensified from tropical storm to Category 5 hurricane in only 42 hours, something which has never happened so quickly. Carriacou, just 12 square miles in size, or 31 square kilometres, with a population of 6,000, suffered a direct hit. There was hardly a building that didn't receive damage, and some estimates were that 90 to 95% of buildings had lost all or parts of their roofs. Sadly, 2 fatalities had occurred on Carriacou and 1 on Grenada's main island. Although looking at the devastation you might think this is a low number, it's still devastating to a close-knit community where everybody knows each other.
We have reports of extensive storm surge. We have reports of extensive loss of roof and damage to buildings. There is the likelihood of even greater damage.
Information in the first hours and even days was hard to gather, as all electricity and communications infrastructure had been decimated. The only communication in or out of the island was via the Starlink systems on some of the cruising yachts that had survived the hurricane. Cruisers were now taking their Starlinks ashore to let locals contact relatives, government agencies and emergency services. Most homes and businesses were without water. None had electricity apart from a very few with generators. Roads were impassable and strewn with large pieces of debris. And even Carriacou's new solar farm, something they were immensely proud of, was completely destroyed. In the cruisers forums, people were anxiously asking about friends and the condition of their yachts. Little tidbits of information started to trickle through as people walked around taking pictures in the days after. Virtually every monohull in one yard had fallen. Around a half in the second yard had also fallen, although the second yard used cradles and was a little bit more protected from the winds, especially the winds that came after the eye. People who were storing their boats but were overseas were asking if anyone could take pictures of their yachts and post them up on social media. And this is how I first came in contact with Kay, the owner of Benny, a 50-foot sailboat in one of the boatyards in Carriacou. Kay had received and shared to the group a picture of her yacht that, despite being hurricane strapped by the yard, was now on her side, along with a few other yachts who had also fallen alongside her in a row. She had said that Benny looked okay, besides her mast being broken in 2 places, and that a repair shouldn't be too difficult. Meanwhile, in another spot, an oversight had been made by the boatyard prior to the hurricane, and the yard's own crane had been left with its arm up in the air. Subsequently, it had come crashing to the ground during the hurricane, destroying the crane. This now gave owners of larger yachts no way of stepping their masts. The yard's travel lift, although looking intact, had, according to official sources, also been rendered inoperable after the hurricane and would apparently need repairs and checking before being able to be operated again safely. Without these 2 modes of lifting boats, the yard had no way of lifting up yachts or masts. I also noticed that some people were starting to show no interest in repairing their yachts, instead opting to take payouts from their insurance companies. Others were saying that it was all just too difficult and traumatic and just wanted out. In the weeks that passed, I followed what the yacht owners were going through, those that had lost their yachts and others that were trying desperately to secure theirs, as looters started ransacking many of the yachts that had fallen, in the larger yard especially. People were also complaining of not being able to get in touch with the management at one of the boatyards, the same one that was being looted. A few weeks later, there came chatter of a salvager arriving with a crane. Some yacht owners, though, were irate and going online to warn others, as they had received quotes about lifting their yachts back up onto their stands. The prices quoted in 2 cases I saw were $17,500 and $20,000. I was a little shocked at the prices myself, and I was really starting to understand some of the pitfalls and hidden costs of yacht ownership. And for someone who didn't have a lot of money, it was a little scary and seemed like there were many traps for the naive. Around this time also, many yachts had arrived there as part of a relief project called Rise Grenada, which had cruisers loading up with much needed tarps, tools and supplies on other islands after the hurricane and sailing to Carriacou to help desperate locals. Rise Grenada is still active, so if you want to help, there's a link below. This channel will give all of the proceeds of this episode to that cause. While he was there, Hoob had come across a hurricane-damaged catamaran whose owner also wanted to sell. So he decided to take on the responsibility of fixing her up and getting her back on the water. I watched in awe on YouTube as he got eaten by swarms of mozzies and sweated it out in scorching heat, humidity and dust, but in the end did an amazing job at restoring his new catamaran in some really difficult conditions. It's definitely worth a watch. Well done, Hoob. After recently having come back from Malaysia where I had narrowly missed out on my own fixer-upper yacht, I started wondering if perhaps there was a salvage yacht in Carriacou that would suit me. Maybe something with a broken mast that could be spliced and with only superficial damage to the hull. And being totally honest, hurricane salvaged or abandoned yachts were probably the only ones I could afford. And even then I'd have to beg, steal and borrow, so I had no idea how I was even going to buy one. Hoob had also been helping out in the yard by getting video and information to yacht owners regarding their boats, as many were finding it hard to get any info from the yard. As a fan, I had already had contact with Hoob prior to all of this, and seeing as he was on the ground over there, I decided to send him an email asking him if he knew of any 45 to 50 foot yachts in need of repairs and a new owner after the hurricane. He put me in touch with the owner of a 50 foot Chinook that had fallen off her stands and snapped her rudder and mast, but upon contacting the owner, the quoted price was higher than I could afford. By this stage, people were starting to put more pictures up on social media of the yard, and I started to realise the scale of the damage and how many boats were involved. It was huge. I also noticed through the Facebook groups that many owners were either overseas or not allowed onto the island because authorities had deemed resources like water, accommodation and food to be so scarce that only locals, essential emergency services and cruisers who were totally self-sufficient and there to help to be allowed onto the island. After a week, I sent Hoob another message. I thanked him for putting me onto the owner of the Chinook and asked if perhaps he knew of anyone selling another 45 to 50 foot yacht. He helped out again and put me in touch with a man who was selling a Beneteau 473. But after closer inspection, this one as well was probably beyond my abilities and resources to fix. Around this time I noticed a picture on Kay's Facebook banner. By coincidence, Kay owned the exact same electric guitar as me. So naturally, I thought I'd say hi and compliment her on her amazing taste. It turns out that Kay was 79 years old and still playing. She grew up watching, hanging out with and partying with bands like the Rolling Stones. I was just a little bit jealous. Kay even sent me pics of her and her brother together with Keith Richards, Bill Wyman and the late great Hannibal Lecter. The late great Brian Jones. Kay and I spoke often around this period and I often followed with interest as Kay navigated lifting and fixing her yacht. A principled person, it seemed there was no way Kay was going to agree to pay or allow the insurer to pay what she perceived as an extortionate amount to do what was probably a couple of hours' work in lifting her yacht up. Kay was in a standoff with the salvager and the yard and had decided to wait it out to try and find a better solution once the salvager had gone. Kay had said there was no reason that the yard's travel lift couldn't lift up Benny and that the $350 per hour for the travel lift, which was advertised on the yard's website, was what should be charged. When I spoke to the owner of the Beneteau and passed on buying his yacht, he mentioned to me that there was a Beneteau 50 in the yard that was about to go up for sale. He said it was Kay's. This surprised me a bit. I didn't think Kay was going to sell, as I'd spoken to her and seen her post in the cruisers groups about repairing her yacht, so it wasn't even on my radar. I contacted Kay again and this time asked if she was selling her yacht. She said yes. She explained that her situation had changed and she had much work coming and was doubtful to sail for the upcoming season. That, coupled with the fact that repairing the mast could take up to 18 months in that part of the world due to what would almost certainly be a lack of qualified riggers, fiberglasses and repairers due to the sheer magnitude of yachts now needing repairs in the area. Kay had already been in touch with her insurer and they had offered her a payout. Kay then asked me if I'd be interested in buying Benny. I said maybe. But it really depends on what's wrong with it and on the price, as I had limited skills and funds. Kay said I needed to speak to her insurance agent and did me the favour of sending the agent an email as well. After speaking to the insurance agent, it turned out that the salvager had also been trying to buy Benny, after again quoting $17,500 to lift her. The insurer was not happy about this situation, but in these cases, as I've learned, the insurers have their MO to stick to. Their perspective in these situations is a bit like this. The insurance company don't want to pay out and immediately take ownership of a yacht, as this meant added costs to them in the way of storage, repairs and other liabilities that can quickly escalate, and which cost an insurance company at least twice what it would cost an individual, and in some cases far, far more than that. In some of these cases where they write off a yacht, they want to secure a buyer and to transfer ownership on or as close to the same day as the payout as they can. Most of the time even before they pay out, so that there's an instant transfer of ownership and the insurer have no further costs or liabilities. In other words, they just want to wash their hands of the yachts as quick as possible. From watching the conversations from outraged owners in the cruisers groups, I had it on good authority what the salvager was offering to buy some of these yachts, and it wasn't much. But I could in no way afford to buy a lemon either, so I rapidly needed to know more. Kay was already in the process of doing the paperwork for the payout from the insurer, so time was against me to get the info I needed to make an educated decision and an offer. Kay was also still accumulating daily storage costs, and the salvager or yard had indicated that if a decision on lifting was not made, they would begin to charge twice and possibly 3 times the storage cost due to the area that would be covered by a yacht on her side, which I and many others thought was a bit harsh, especially seeing as there was plenty of room in the yard. So there I was. I probably had a day or two to make a decision and an offer. I was on the other side of the world, had no money, but in Carriacou on her side lay a very nice Beneteau 50, with a salvager who was trying to buy her, turning the screws in his favour with the help of the yard. But on my side, I had a great owner who understood the situation, and now wanted me to buy her boat and was willing to help. But there was no confirmed price. I also had no idea of the extent of the damage, very few pictures to go on, and no idea what I was going to pay to lift her, possibly to a pissed off salvager who himself had just missed out on her. A lot had to go my way, but what I've found in life is that you have to make your own luck, and even then some things don't come off, so you need to keep throwing punches. And after the crap I'd gone through in the last 6 months, I was ready for a fight. But as I was soon to find out, so was the big shot salvager. In the next episode, it's a race against the clock. I try to find someone in Carriacou on the ground that can get to Benny and assess her hull, as the big shot tries to buy the yacht from under me and the yard turn the screws in his favour.
Looks intact.
Hey guys, thanks for watching the saga of the hurricane damaged yacht in Carriacou. If you haven't already, please hit the like and subscribe button. It really helps us charge up the algorithm and get seen. And it costs you absolutely nothing. Thanks for being on board, and see you in the next episode.